Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're studying Chapter 13 in our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This chapter is titled Identifying Cravings, Cultivating Non-Craving, and Analysis of the Mind. This is where I'm going to go in. I'm going to teach you how to surgically remove some of your cravings, desires, attachments, the longing, the yearning. So far, I've been teaching you all kinds of training that is coming from the Eightfold Path and all the other teachings of the Buddha, which are very specific teachings, but it's kind of like a general way to train the mind to eliminate any and all cravings, where today it's going to be something very specific, and it's a step-by-step process of how to identify your cravings and how to actually analyze them and actually put together a plan to almost surgically remove them from the mind. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. We're going to start with meditation just like always, and then afterwards I'm going to teach you this particular topic. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you might pull up a meditation cushion or a chair or a sofa or whatever it is that you'd like to do for your meditation position. I'm going to ease us into meditation with the chanting. Then there's going to be a period of time where I'm guiding you. There's then going to be some quiet where we're just all meditating together, and then we're going to come out of that with some more chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Apiva Teami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sambuddho Sakato Rokavito Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhuto bhagavati. Okay, with your lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะกะวาพุทธังมะกะวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะกะวะตาอะธัมโมธัมมังนะมัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนะมามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิจาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ All right, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Welcome to our class today. Nice to see everyone today. I'm going to be sharing with you guys a topic that's part of chapter 13, which is titled Identifying Cravings, Cultivating Non-Craving, and Analysis of the Mind. Up to this point in our group learning program, I've been helping you to understand all the foundational teachings. And if you've taken one of my foundational courses, then you've learned a lot of these things already, like the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, meditation training, the 3 poisons, what is the natural law of dhamma and how does it affect me, what is merit. You've been learning all these things, which is really laying a really good solid foundation for you. And of course, you don't know those things inside and out yet because you're still learning, you're still growing, you're still working to understand those and implement them into your life. And you can revisit those teachings at any time. But now what we're going to be doing in this group learning program is we're going to start turning towards some other topics that are going to take you deeper into understanding how to actually solve the challenges that you now know about. You know about craving, anger, and ignorance. You know about the 10 fetters. You know about how the Eightfold Path is providing this generalized training to be able to train the mind. You understand that meditation, like breathing mindfulness meditation, is targeting craving, desire, attachment, as well as generosity. You understand how loving kindness meditation is targeting the anger, the hatred, the ill will. And then you need to practice loving kindness in your day-to-day life through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And you've been learning about how to cultivate wisdom. That's what's awakening the mind, is learning, examining, and investigating teachings, reflecting on them to independently verify them and practice them, integrating them into your day-to-day life. So now that you've got this basis of understanding and you're starting to build up your practice where you're generally training the mind to be able to eliminate all the pollutions that exist, we're now going to talk about something that allows you to go in and surgically remove individual cravings, desires, attachments from the mind. This particular thing that I'm going to teach you guys is really going to help you to be able to eliminate very specific cravings that are in the mind. And this is going to work in many, many situations where you might be struggling with very specific things and challenged with very specific cravings. But first, before I get into explaining that to you and how to actually do this, let me just be sure you remember what craving, desire, attachment is. Craving, desire, attachment is that mental longing for something with a strong eagerness, where the mind is pulling towards the direction of the objects of its affection. It's like an unquenchable thirst. The mind is trying to form its inner feelings based on this thing. Whereas if the mind's longing, yearning for something, and if it gets what it wants, it gets those pleasant feelings like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. But if the mind doesn't get what it wants, it gets the painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. And that's where, with a lack of wisdom, the mind will typically associate those painful feelings to something external. And you might push people away, you might be bitter, harsh, and hostile with them through your intentions, speech, and actions, or you might put your expectations on them and try to control them. But in reality, it's these cravings within one's own mind that's causing all these discontent feelings. So the craving, desire, attachment is the cause that is causing this problem in the unenlightened mind. If you remember the Four Noble Truths, the problem that the Buddha discovered is the conditioned feelings, how the mind forms its inner feelings based on some condition. Whereas if it's sunny outside, you might get really happy, but then when it's raining, you get sad or frustrated. If your bank account balance is up here, you get really, really happy, but then when it goes down here, you get sad or frustrated. That's the problem, that the mind is forming its inner feelings based on some condition. Then the cause of that problem is the craving, desire, attachment. That's what's causing this problem of discontentedness in the mind. And what you need to be able to do is learn how to eliminate these cravings, desires, attachments. And that's what you've been learning so far with the Eightfold Path and all the other teachings. Craving, desire, attachment is the very first of the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. And whenever you're making decisions through those cravings, desires, attachments, this is the mind making decisions based on your own selfish desires, you're going to be experiencing unwholesome results, or unwholesome dhamma. And you've been learning about breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity, and how that's really working specifically to target craving, desire, attachment. But the craving, desire, attachment is not going to be able to be completely eliminated through only the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity. You're going to need other things besides just the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity. And that's where what I'm going to teach you today really comes in. And then there's the fuel that causes rebirth is this craving, desire, attachment. This is what's actually causing the mind to continue to be reborn over and over and over again. If it wasn't for craving, desire, attachment existing in the mind, then there wouldn't be rebirth. Now, I know many of you guys haven't had the opportunity or the teachings to be able to independently verify the cycle of rebirth yet. So this might be something that you just note in your own mind, like, okay, I understand. That's what David's teaching. But at the point where you independently verify the cycle of rebirth, you'll know that craving, desire, attachment is the cause. That not only does it cause the discontent feelings, but it causes rebirth as well. So this is why it's so important to eliminate craving, desire, attachment in the mind, because not only is it causing the discontent feelings, but it's causing this being to keep coming back into the world over and over and over again in continuous rebirths over and over and over again. So this is the number one goal on the path to enlightenment, is to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. By eliminating your craving, desire, attachment, it will eliminate the discontent mind. But how could you ever eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments if you didn't know how to identify them? You need to be able to know how to actually identify your cravings, your desires, your attachments. Because when you identify them, then you can actually target them. So just like you build the skill and the ability to learn meditation, like breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation and the others, you're going to need to build this skill or this ability to identify your cravings. It's the second most important skill that you could actually have on the path. Because while a teacher can help you to understand how to identify your cravings, we can't be with you all the time. This is your own independent practice. It's your own independent journey. You're going to need to be able to look inward and be introspective and be able to identify what are your cravings, desires, attachments that are leading to any particular bout of discontentedness. And when you can identify them, that's when you can then start eliminating them. Where breathing mindfulness meditation and generosity is a generalized training that you need to be practicing at all times in order to be able to get to the point where you can actually be working to eliminate your discontentedness. So you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment with only what I'm going to teach you today, but you also wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment with only breathing mindfulness meditation or generosity. But you need those things to be on board so that you can be actively training your mind and kind of softening it up so that when you get to the point of doing the things that I'm going to teach you today, that the mind will be willing to let go, let go, let go. So the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity is helping you to develop the qualities that you need to be able to train the mind to let go. So you need those things to be ongoing. And that's why what I'm teaching you today is in chapter 13, because you needed those things to be on board first. So you still need to pay attention to that mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path, which is right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. That's going to culminate into helping you eliminate all your cravings, desires, attachments, as well as the wisdom section and the moral conduct section, so that you can get to the peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy, which is the enlightened mind. But as you've got that well underway and you feel like you've got your arms around that really well, then you move into learning what I'm going to teach you today. If you were driving a car and a red light came on the dashboard of your car, you would probably pull over to the side of the road. And if you've got some skills, you would probably pop your hood and you would probably start looking under your hood to see if you could figure out what it is that's actually causing the car to have this red light on the dashboard. If you didn't have skills, you would probably take the car into a mechanic and have the mechanic take a look for you and help you to understand why this service engine soon light is coming on the dashboard of your car. Well, when you're experiencing discontentedness in your day-to-day life, like the anger, the sadness, the frustration, the irritation, the annoyance, the guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, any of these discontent feelings in others, whenever they're coming into the mind, that's the red light on the dashboard. It's alerting you that there's a craving, desire, attachment in the mind, and maybe even multiple. And just like the car you would like to pull over to the side of the road and start investigating, that's what you would like to be able to do with the mind. You would like to be able to look inward at the mind and figure out what is it that's causing this discontentedness. Because you know that it's craving, desire, attachment if you've studied the Four Noble Truths. But you need to be able to identify specifically what is the specific craving, desire, attachment. What is the craving for permanence that the mind has? So you can use that discontentedness as a red light. Oftentimes when we're getting angry and frustrated and irritated or annoyed and we lack wisdom of these teachings, we're looking for someone else to blame and we're trying to blame something external. But instead, if you understand the Four Noble Truths and you've had the breakthrough to be able to see with 100% certainty that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, then when you see those discontent feelings arising, you start looking inward. You start being introspective. You stop blaming other people and you start looking inward to figure out what are the cravings, desires, attachments that are causing this. So I'm going to teach you a process here that you can employ with your discontentedness. Because with your discontentedness and that red light is arising, you would like to have the skill to be able to pop the hood and look under your car and figure out what is the cravings, desires, attachments. But as you're first getting started, you might need to take your car to the mechanic. And taking your mind to the mechanic in this analogy is coming to the teacher, maybe scheduling a personal guidance session, or maybe we talk in classes, or you send me private messages, or you post in our Facebook group. And as you ask questions questions 2 or 3 or 4 times, you'll eventually build this ability to be introspective and look inward and figure out what are your cravings, desires, attachments. So I'm going to teach you this process that you can learn this technique and then you can start employing it. But understand, as you employ this technique, you might need to reach out to me from time to time to get help. But as you do that, as your auto mechanic, I'm going to teach you how to do this yourself. So after 2, 3, 4, 5 times or what have you, you'll ultimately be able to do this on your own without any involvement from me whatsoever. So this process to be able to help you identify your cravings through analysis of the mind and then almost surgically remove them starts when discontentedness occurs. When discontentedness arises, this is your red light. And based on what you know about the Eightfold Path, you should know now that whenever discontentedness is arising, you cut it off and let it go. And you would like to catch that sooner and sooner. Remember, there's going to be those bodily sensations that are occurring first, whether it's a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, or feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. You may not be tuned into these yet, but with your breathing mindfulness meditation, you'll start getting tuned into the bodily sensations more and more, where you're going to start noticing that as a preliminary thing that is occurring before the mind becomes discontent. So something like anger, you might notice some tingling in the body, some tightening in the chest, tightening in the throat. Maybe you have heat in the face or pressure in the skull. This is the early warning system alerting you that you're about to get discontent. That's the red light. So now you would like to cut it off and let it go as a bodily sensation. But if you miss it there, it's going to become a feeling. And that's where you would like to cut it off there, redirect the mind towards something else. Because if you don't, it's going to affect the condition of the mind, where now for a few hours or a few days, you're grumpy and irritable. Or if you don't cut it off there, now it's going to form this mental object and feed this mental object in the mind. So not only are you cutting off the painful feelings and the neither painful nor pleasant, you need to cut off the pleasant feelings. And this is oftentimes seems counterintuitive to people because this is what oftentimes the unenlightened mind is chasing after. It makes a lot of sense to you to cut off the anger and the frustration and the irritation and the annoyance. That's very straightforward. But there is no secrets on the path to enlightenment, but there's something you got to really pay attention to that could be considered almost like a pivotal aspect of the path to enlightenment. You need to be able to see the conditioned pleasant feelings as just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. Remember, those conditioned pleasant feelings, it's the temporary happiness that the mind is getting when it's forming its inner feelings based on some condition. So if you allow the mind to get the pleasant feelings when it's sunny outside, that means when it's raining, you're going to be frustrated. So you understand cutting off the frustration, but you need to be able to see that that frustration is coming because you allowed the pleasant feelings to come into the mind when it was sunny. Or if you get really happy when your bank account balance is up here, when your bank account balance goes down, you're going to be frustrated because the mind is forming these conditioned feelings. So those bodily sensations associated with the pleasant feelings, sometimes in certain cultures, we call them warm fuzzies, where you have that tingling sensation over your shoulders, up the back of your neck and over your head. And it's like, oh, those feel so good. You just want to indulge in those so much, right? But that's the early warning system alerting you that you're about to get a conditioned, pleasant feeling. And you need to be able to cut that off. You need to be willing to let go of that temporary happiness in order to get to the permanent happiness, which is the unconditioned happiness. So whenever discontentedness is coming up, try to catch it sooner and sooner as a bodily sensation and cut it off and let it go. And as you do that, the mind's going to eventually get to some calmness. It might take a few minutes, a few hours, or maybe even a few days, depending on how strong the discontentedness was. But after you've cut it off and let it go with step one, and your mind has now regained its composure, whether it's a couple minutes, a couple hours, or a couple days, you'd like to move to step two. What step two is now with a calm mind, you start reflecting, you start looking inward, you start becoming introspective. Instead of blaming something external, you start looking inward and trying to figure out what are the cravings, desires, attachments that led to this discontentedness. And that's where you're looking inwards. You're not looking outwards and blaming other people anymore, because you know that the discontentedness is coming from within your own mind. Once you look and you identify what are your cravings, desires, attachments, now you develop a plan to eliminate these specific cravings, desires, attachments that are causing the discontentedness, all the while maintaining a consistent practice of breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity. Then you're going to repeat this process with each individual craving, desire, attachment. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through this with an example from my own life so you can see how this works. Okay? So let's talk, before we talk about the example, let's talk about this plan. Okay? This plan that you're going to put together, this is actually, in some cases, you're going to distance yourself from the object. In other cases, you're going to put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. If you notice that you're getting conditioned pleasant feelings from something and your mind wants to hold on to it, you're going to need to distance yourself from that. If you're noticing that you're repulsed by something and you're pushing something away, you're going to need to put your mind in that situation. So here, let me give you an example. So one time I was driving down the street, I'd left my house, I was in my wife's truck, and I reached down to get my phone in my pocket, and I realized that my mobile phone was not in my pocket. And right away, this fear came into my mind. And I happened to be stopped at a red light when this actually occurred. And this fear, this overwhelming fear came into my mind. Oh my goodness, I don't have my phone. What happens if I get a flat tire? What happens if I get in an accident? Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, right? All these things started circulating through the mind. And the first thing that I needed to do was cut that off and let it go. Cut off that fear that was arising in the mind. So I cut that off and I regained my composure while sitting at that traffic light. Then I started to reflect and I started to look inward. What the mind wanted to do is it wanted to turn around, because I was only 5 minutes from my house, and you turn and go get the phone. Because the mind was craving that permanence. It was trying to hold on to the phone because it wanted it to be permanent. And the mind wanted to go get it because that's what the mind thought was going to solve the problem. But as I reflected on this and I realized that my mind was craving to have the phone to be permanent, and I was craving a certain comfort and reassurance that I could be safe, I realized the last thing I was interested in is going to get that phone, because that didn't solve the problem. The problem was the cause of the problem was the craving inside the mind. And going back to get the phone doesn't solve the problem. The problem was the fear. And the very next time that I left the house without the phone, the fear would have been there again if I would have allowed the craving to continue. So realizing that the problem is the fear and the cause of that is craving, and turning around to go get the phone, maintaining the phone to be permanent in my life isn't going to be possible, and that's not going to solve the problem. I started to develop a plan of how I was going to solve this, because I needed to eliminate this craving from the mind. And I started thinking about how when I was a child, I used to go outside without a mobile phone all the time, because mobile phones didn't come about until I was in my late 20s. So why can't I go outside without a phone now? I used to do it in the past. Why can't I do it now? So that day I was supposed to go out for about an hour and a half and do a few things in the town. But I decided that what I was going to do is, developing my plan as part of step 3, I was going to put the mind in the situation that it didn't want to be in, because my mind was craving and wanting to hold on to this phone permanently, and it could only feel comfortable if it was outside with the phone. So I decided to extend my day. Instead of just going out for an hour and a half, I extended my time outside. I went out to get something to eat. I went to the movies, I went shopping, I did all these other things. I was outside for like 5 or 6 hours. And then when I came home, I didn't just go run to the phone and start looking to see who might have sent me a message or something like this. I actually went and did some things with my son. I did some things at the house. 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours later, I then went and looked at the phone to see what was going on with the phone. It was like a non-issue. And in that situation, that was the first thing that I did. Then I waited 2 or 3 days, and then I intentionally went outside without the phone. and I felt a little bit awkward. I didn't have the fear that I had the first day, but I felt a little bit awkward. It felt weird to be outside without the phone. But once again, I extended my time outside. I did different things outside. When I came home, I didn't go to the phone right away. I waited 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours before I went to the phone. And then I waited another 2, 3, 4, 5 days, and I did it again. And I noticed that the mind was really calm when I went out on that third time. There was no fear, there was no ickiness or uncalmness. The mind was just fine. And I was pretty convinced that I had eliminated this craving, desire, attachment with those 3 particular times going outside without the phone. But then about 2 months later, I accidentally left the phone at home again. It was the exact same thing. I was driving down the road in my wife's truck. I reached down for the phone. It wasn't there. I realized it wasn't there. And I was like, oh, well, no phone. And I just kept on going. There was no fear. There was no uncomfortableness. It was just like, oh, well, right? I've done this before. I've gone outside without the phone. No big deal. I'm just going to keep going. And I just went ahead and did my things that I needed to do. And then when I came home, I went and took a look at the phone and no big deal. But then about a year after that, I accidentally dropped the phone and the entire screen shattered. And I looked at it and I started laughing. And I was like, of course this phone just broke because it's impermanent. And fortunately, my wife had another phone that she wasn't using, so she let me use that one. And I ended up getting that phone and started using that phone, right? So in this process, this plan, I was able to gradually eliminate this craving, desire, attachment. And then I just needed to repeat this process over and over and over again for each individual craving, desire, attachment, all the while having breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity underway. So this was what I needed to do with a craving, desire, attachment that my mind was holding on to. And I was getting these pleasant feelings from it, and I wanted it to be permanent. But now I'm going to give you an example of one that I did where I was repulsed by something and I didn't like it, okay? So there's a particular fruit here in Asia called durian, and people either really think it's the best fruit they've ever had or they despise this fruit. So I was in that second category. I despise this fruit. To me, this fruit smells like poop. And I've never had poop in my mouth before, but if I did, I think it would be the consistency of this fruit. Because the first time I ever put it in my mouth, it smelled like poop and it had the consistency of poop in my mouth. And I spit it out and I despised it. I never wanted to be around it ever again. So realizing this is the craving, desire, attachment, that my mind craved for things to be a certain way, and I was repulsed. I had aversion to this fruit. And realizing this, when that came up, I needed to cut that off and let it go, cut that off and let it go. I needed to reflect and realize that this was my craving, desire, attachment that led to these discontent feelings. I was craving for a certain flavor, a certain odor, and a certain consistency in my mouth. So now I developed a plan to eliminate this specific craving. And because this was something that I was repulsed by, I didn't need to distance myself from it like I did the cell phone. I needed to actually put my mind in the situation that it didn't want to be in. So what I did is I started eating durian that was inside of cakes because I enjoy eating cakes and muffins and things like this. And having them inside of a cake, the odor was muted and the consistency that the fruit has wasn't there because it was inside of a piece of cake. So I would regularly eat these durian cakes. And I ate those over multiple times. And then after eating those several times, I then went to the fruit and I started eating the fruit and it was no problem whatsoever. So I slowly started exposing the mind to the thing that it was repulsed by and trained it to let go of this craving, desire, attachment, this sensual desire, and to start looking at food as just something that nourishes the body, not something that needs to please the tongue and please the mind. But then ultimately, I actually started to enjoy this fruit. And if I had that fruit around, I would have no issues eating it. It would be completely fine. I'm not repulsed by it. So this is what you're going to need to do with each one of your cravings, your desires, your attachments. You're going to need to use that discontentedness like a red light on the dashboard of your car. As soon as the discontentedness is arising, catch it as soon as possible, potentially as a bodily sensation, and you would like to cut that off and let it go. That's what you would like to do, is cut it off and let it go. cut it off and let it go. And then when your mind gains its composure and you're calm, either a few minutes or a few hours or a few days later, start reflecting inward to be able to understand what are the cravings, desires, attachments that led to this discontentedness. Once you identify this, and oftentimes it's more than one when you're first starting to practice these teachings, then you need to develop a plan that's either going to distance yourself from that thing that your mind's holding on to and wanting to be permanent and getting all those pleasant feelings from, or you're going to need to put your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in. That's in the situation where your mind's repulsed by this thing and you're experiencing painful feelings and you want to push this thing away. Then you just repeat this over and over and over again with each individual craving, desire, attachment that you have. So what I'm going to do is give you guys some time to ask me questions about this process and what I've described here. You're welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. But then ultimately, what I'm going to invite you guys to do is a group activity where you can get help to develop and cultivate this ability to look inward and put together a plan to solve any particular cravings, desires, attachments that you might have. So what I would suggest that you do is think about some recent situations where you've been angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed or any other discontent feeling, and think about what that is and try to discover what were your cravings, desires, attachments, and maybe even think about a particular plan that you would put together. And you might decide to share this, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. You can put this in the comment section. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and then you can open up your microphone and we can talk about it. You can do this in one of three ways. You could just say, here, David, here's the situation that I encountered and here's what I experienced. And I have no idea what my cravings are. And I have no idea what kind of plan to put together. You might just say, here's the situation that I have. And I will help you to be able to see what your cravings were and to be able to understand how to put together a plan. Or you might say, David, here's the situation. Here's the cravings, desires, attachments that I think I had, but I have no idea how to put together a plan for this. And then I will help you. I will confirm those things for you, and then I will help you understand how to put together a plan. Or you might say, here's the situation. Here's the cravings, desires, attachments that I had, and then here's the type of plan that I think I should now employ in order to surgically remove these from the mind. And then I will confirm that for you and help you to maybe see some things that you're not seeing. So if you would like to ask me questions about anything I just taught you, or you would like to do this group activity, you can just let me know by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So let me know if you guys would like to share as part of this group activity or if you have questions that you would like to ask. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody anywhere. Okay, looks like Kristen or Ted maybe has something. Go ahead, guys.
So I have a situation. I started working again, and I'm working at a yoga studio, and part of our task each day is to make sure that the space is clean and ready for the next person, right? So like each shift, you have a list of things that you need to take care of, and I make sure that when I leave, the studio is really clean and it's nice and ready for the next class or person working at the studio. And I find that on Thursdays, every time I walk into the studio, it's a mess. The person doesn't do anything. And I get a little frustrated because it's like, well, I spend a lot of time making sure that the place is clean and pretty and ready to go for the next person. And when I come in on Thursdays, it's never done. And so I think my craving is having the studio look the way I left it, right? That feeling of wanting everything to be clean and organized, and it isn't. And so I struggle with how to, do I say anything? Do I not say anything? I mean, I do the work and I clean up and take care of the stuff that wasn't done, but I mean, that's kind of all I do. But there's definitely a feeling of frustration when I walk in and see a mess.
Okay. So there's no harm in speaking up in order to talk with this person and help them to understand that it's wise for them to make the decision to clean up. There's no harm in doing that. But that's not going to solve the craving, desire, attachment in the mind. So what I'm going to recommend to you is how to solve this craving, desire, attachment. And then once you get that out of your mind, then there's no harm in you going and trying to ensure that the person before you does clean up the studio. But you'll be able to do that better because you won't be angry or frustrated or irritated or annoyed. But before you go off and do that, because that's not going to solve the craving, let's talk about what you need to do here. So this plan that I mentioned to you, this process of walking through these 4 steps, this is you as an individual inducing the triggering of your craving, desire, attachment. So like me intentionally leaving my phone at home, I was intentionally triggering that craving, desire, attachment in the mind to give me an opportunity to cut that off and let it go and get comfortable going outside without the phone. When I was eating that durian fruit, that was me intentionally trying to trigger my craving, desire, attachment so that I could cut that off and let that go. And that's what this process does, is it puts you in the driver's seat where you can actually trigger these cravings, desires, attachment and give your mind the opportunity to let it go. And this will work in probably a good 80% of the situations. But there's about 20% of the situations, and Kristen, yours happens to be one of those, where you can't really induce this. But by you not saying anything to anybody about this, it's going to allow your mind to actually be able to get comfortable with this. So what I encourage you to do at this stage is don't say anything to anybody about what's going on when you're coming in, that the fact that the studio is not prepared in the way that you would like it to be prepared. Instead, just go in each Thursday, I think you said, where you go in and you just know it's not going to be prepared in the way that it's supposed to be. And now, before you ever go in, just keep training your mind that it's not going to look the way that you would like it to look, and just cut off any discontentedness that's coming up. Allow that craving, desire, attachment to get triggered. But each time, work on becoming calmer and calmer and calmer until the point where it doesn't have any discontentedness anymore. When you go in 3, 4, 5, 6 times in a row and there's no discontentedness whatsoever, and you know that you've gotten rid of that craving, desire, attachment, then if you choose to speak up and try to help any individual who's there before you to know that this isn't occurring, then go ahead and solve it. But you would be able to solve that aspect of it with right intention, right speech, right action, because you're not going to speak harsh, you're not going to be aggressive or sarcastic or bitter or having animosity, because you've already let go of the craving and none of that discontent feeling is in your mind anymore. So give yourself a good long while to get rid of this craving first. And then, because it's nice to work in an environment where people are attending to the task that they need to attend to, that's where you speak up and actually address it so that your coworker can understand that they need to tidy up before they leave.
Okay. It's interesting because she's the manager of the studio. That's what makes it even harder.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. I mean, I thought about it. I haven't said anything to anyone, and I'm trying to do just that, just kind of accept it, and just that's part of my job to clean the studio and make sure it's nice, and it's nice. So I'm trying that, but yeah, speaking up is going to be tough if I ever decide to.
If you don't have your craving in your mind, it won't be so tough. But because of the craving, it's going to be tough. And that's why I'm encouraging you to train your mind to let it go first before you speak up. You would like to see a good 3, 4, 5, 6 times that you're completely calm, you have no discontentedness, not even the slightest little ickiness in your mind. You're completely comfortable with the way things are now, right? Because the things are messy. But then once you see that 3, 4, 5, 6 times, now you'll be better prepared to be able to deal with this in a friendly and polite and respectful way.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so it looks like, I'm sorry, I can't see all the letters of your name. How do you pronounce your name?
Hi, it's Rotem.
Rotem.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Okay. My eyesight's not so good, so the letters here on Zoom are very small. So yeah,
No, it's not easy to pronounce to
okay.
anyone from not from my country. Thank you
Hmm.
for the opportunity to talk.
Hmm.
Okay, so I was thinking about this exact thing a few days ago. I had my birthday on Friday, last Friday, and I invited some friends to celebrate with me, which usually I hate because I really hate the feeling of expecting people to come and then be disappointed, like about who came and who didn't came. And eventually, I did like chose to celebrate, and I found myself really thinking about who came to my birthday and who didn't came to my birthday and who said Mazal Tov. I don't know how you say Mazal Tov. Like congratulations for your birthday.
Hmm.
And I was really thinking about it after I was talking with a friend and I told her I know I should not expect anyone to say congratulations. People has their life. It doesn't say anything about if they like me or not. And even if they don't like me, it's fine, but still I found myself obsessing over it, and then also after that I was angry about myself. Why are you getting so frustrated of this such thing? So I was in a loop of just being disappointed, then being angry about myself. Why are you disappointed? And yeah, I was really thinking about what you would say to me, and I know like the answer, but it was just, it's written here, just cut it off, but I could not do it. It
Hmm.
was really hard for me, all this loop of thinking.
Yeah. So because you're just starting to learn with me, I know you were here in Chiang Mai recently, right? Your mind is just starting to get training. So it hasn't matured enough. It hasn't accumulated enough of the benefits of all the different teachings and all the different practices to be able to cut it off and let it go. So while we say that, that's what you need to do, which is cut it off and let it go, the mind really struggles with that, particularly early in practice. So you need to be able to put together enough meditation and enough generosity that the mind can mature and mature and mature and mature, and it'll get better and better at releasing these cravings, desires, attachments. But at least you observed and you noticed that you had this. That's a very key thing. So in this situation, I understand exactly what you're talking about. I used to have those kinds of things too, where you're craving for certain people to come, and then when they do come, you're craving and expecting them to say something specific to you. So what you would like to do is you would like to do these kinds of things frequently. Where what the unenlightened mind will tend to do is be like, oh, that hurt so much because these people didn't come, these people didn't say what I wanted them to say, so I'm never going to have a party ever again. That's typically what the mind's going to want to do, is have aversion and push it away. But you would actually like to do just the opposite. You would like to start having regular events like this. And I know your birthday is a big one, and you could definitely do that once a year. But if you do this more frequently, it'll actually have more effect on the mind. So if you were able to have like once a month, once every 2 months, or something like this, where you could put together a little outing and there's certain friends who are either going to come or who are not going to come, you're going to need to train your mind to be okay with this, because this is just impermanence. Because sometimes people are going to tell you they can come and they won't actually come. Sometimes people won't tell you they're coming and they actually show up. This is just impermanence. And then when people do show up for whatever it is that you're doing, you need to be able to be sure that you cut off and let go of any expectation of wanting them to say or do anything specific. So if you can have regular events like this, it'll help you to be able to let go, because you're putting your mind in this situation, and it's going to have to get acclimated to this impermanence of sometimes people are going to come, sometimes they won't. Sometimes they'll say certain things that you know that they would potentially say, and other times they're not.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I felt I can even say that in the event itself. So at first hour, most people didn't show up because they just were late and were only four people. And then I was very sad at the first hour about like, why are everyone so late? And then everyone came in by 20 minutes, like everyone just showed up. And then I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy everyone's here, which is also not good. And yeah, I felt so frustrated in the end of the day of being so, how do I say it? Like not stable with my own feelings. I was very sad and very happy. And then I was thinking about who told me congratulations, who didn't tell me, who came, who didn't came. Like, yeah, it was just so hard. And I have to say, I'm not yet meditating. I can't sit. I can't sit and be quiet because maybe it's not related, but I just say it because I've started. I feel like my day is so busy. I'm working all day, really all day, like 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Then when I do have those 10 minutes, I'm trying to meditate. I just found myself with so many things that I didn't talk about all day because I was so busy. And I can't even sit for 10 minutes. It's so hard for me.
Yeah, you're going
Yeah,
to.
I'm a reader.
Yeah, you probably notice how much of a burden it is to carry around this craving, desire, attachment. You probably felt exhausted at the end of your party, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, because that's
definitely.
because the craving was just spinning and spinning and spinning in your mind. And it's such a burden to carry this around that you'll feel exhausted just with all that thinking of who came, who didn't came, who congratulated me, who didn't congratulate me. This is like real exhausting. So you need to be able to see that. And if you don't like the sitting part of it, I don't know, did you learn walking meditation when you were here in Chiang Mai?
No, actually, no.
Okay, so if you go to our YouTube channel and you type walking meditation in the search, not the main YouTube search, but the search for the channel itself, you'll be able to see the walking meditation that I teach. And there you'll be able to learn walking meditation. Because if you don't like to sit in meditation because your mind's too overactive, walking meditation is perfect for you. So you would like to be able to do that. And you're going to need to create some more space in your life for meditation. When I was working a lot and trying to meditate too in the past, when I was in the corporate world, I would sometimes go to the bathroom and I would sit on the toilet with my pants on and I would just meditate in the bathroom because people would leave you alone when they're in the bathroom. Or some companies I worked at, they had lactation rooms for women to go do breastfeeding. And I would go into those rooms and I would actually meditate in one of those rooms because they were little private rooms and people didn't know you were in there necessarily. I just could lock the door. So you might be able to find some space and integrate it into your work day where you take like a little bit of a break since you're working for such long hours. And then on your days off, definitely get your meditation going because that's going to help you to be able to let go and mature the mind so that you can cut off and let go of these discontent feelings as they're arising.
I'll try to. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looks like Josh has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Hello, David. Hello, everybody. Yeah, so my issue is similar to Ropen's. Whenever my wife and I host a dinner get together, I experience a lot of anxiety leading up to the event and while I'm preparing it. I'm the one who prepares the meal, and I have this craving for it to be perfect. And I think and I rethink about the menu, and whenever my wife suggests something for the menu, I just know it's not perfect because I know something about the guests that tells me they wouldn't like it. And even whenever she suggests we host a dinner gathering, I start to resent her for the suggestion. And so I get really worked up in the days leading up. And when I begin preparing, I start to panic a little bit and I want to just run away and just kind of pull the blankets over my head. So, I plan to host many events in the hope that it would kind of expose me to it more frequently. But the anxiety is still there, and my craving for it to be perfect is still there. And I know that I need to train my mind to cut off that expectation and put my mind in that situation, but it just keeps repeating itself.
Okay. So your wife, it sounds like, is going to schedule these things, and you're not going to dissuade her from doing that. So that's good, actually. That's really helpful that she's continuing to schedule these things. But now when you're walking around trying to set up your place to look perfect, you're going to need to step away. Like when you walk up to something and you're just trying to turn that little thing to make it extra perfect, you're going to need to see that your mind's doing that and say, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to leave it the way that it is and step away and just let it be off center a little bit and just tell the mind that that's okay. And even though you have this strong urge to just make it that much better, don't do it. Walk away from it and just let it be. Because what you need to do is you need to have enough of these dinner events where you didn't go around and make everything super perfect. And you can see that when people are leaving out the door, Josh, this was such a great party. Thank you so much. It was so wonderful. I enjoyed it. It was so great. So you're going to need to catch you in the moment where you're trying to go around and put all the extra touches on everything in order to make it extra perfect. And just be like, no, that's presentable. That's what it needs to be. And just be fine with it. And don't try to tweak every last little thing. That's going to be challenging for you, right?
It will be, yeah. So it's like a repeated sort of noticing and self-talk.
Yeah. So with the breathing mindfulness meditation and the generosity underway, that's what's going to help you to be able to do this. And it's going to be challenging. Your mind is going to feel uncomfortable when you're doing it. And that's how you know you're doing what you need to do. Because your mind's going to think, if I just turn that thing and center it, it's going to make me feel so much better. But that's not what's going to make you feel better, because that's something external. What's going to actually make you feel better is getting rid of this craving in the mind. That's what's going to make you feel better. And centering that thing to make it and tweak it to be exactly right isn't going to solve your problem in this situation. So you're going to need to get comfortable with this impermanence of everything is not going to be exactly perfect. And that's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, it looks like maybe Kristen and Ted have something else. Go ahead, guys.
Hey, David, Ted here. I have a question and a couple of comments, I guess. One is, and it's irrelevant, but the mind and the mind would be considered also ego. Like when people or places or things aren't doing what I think they should be doing, my mind is seeking permanence. Would that also be considered? I don't hear ego, the term ego, a lot, or maybe just haven't paid attention. Would be the first question.
Yeah, we're going to start talking about the ego when we get to chapter 16, which is 3 weeks from now. That's where I'm going to start teaching you about the ego. The ego is where the mind is arrogant and prideful. It's measuring and comparing. It's looking at other people and thinking that you're superior to them or inferior to them. That's what the ego is doing mostly. But there's other aspects to it as well. But what you're describing, where you want people to be a certain way, there is sensual desire or craving, desire, attachment there, the wants and expectations. And oftentimes the ego is involved too, the conceit, where the mind thinks, I know the right way to do things, and this person is doing things the wrong way, and that's the ego. But it's also sensual desire as well. There's typically multiple fetters involved in any one situation. It's usually not just one, it's usually multiple. So in that scenario, there's definitely ego involved, but I haven't taught it yet, so that's why I don't teach it yet. But once I teach it in chapter 16, that's where you'll start being able to understand this more.
Thank you. And this is kind of a combination comment. One is, it's just so clear how important breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation is for walking this path. I mean, the cut it off, let it go applies across the board, it seems. And I had it in a few days, and it was frustrating. My mind, I was having trouble letting things go today. So it's apparent that practice is needed. The second thing is that it's going to be really hard, David, to also distance myself in something that feels very good or I'm very attached to, i.e. my wife. I immediately am struck with like a fear or I don't want to let that go, or I don't want to distance myself. But I don't think that diminishes my love for her or our relationship. And I guess I have to understand that a little bit better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's another topic we're going to talk about in 2 weeks from now, which is chapter 15. We're going to be talking in chapter 15 about true love, because letting go of the craving or attachment you have to your wife doesn't mean you let go of the relationship. It just means that you train your mind not to form your inner feelings based on this relationship. And this comes with work and real development, because now that you guys have the baseline foundational teachings, we're going to be diving into some other really important topics like the ego, like true love, like some other things that you guys are going to need in order to be able to make your way to enlightenment. So I'm going to be teaching you guys that. But to help you understand what you would do in order to accomplish what it is that I'm talking about today, about putting your mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, related to a relationship with a life partner or your parents or siblings or children, or even those of you guys that have pets and things like this. The biggest, most impactful impermanence that you can ever experience in a relationship is the ending of that relationship through death. When we experience death in the unenlightened state, it really shakes us up. If you have attachment, if you don't have a craving, desire, attachment in the relationship, you can actually have someone very close to you die, even your life partner, your children, your mother, and you would be completely content. You're not joyful because they died. You're joyful despite that they have died, right? And the way that you get to this is you train your mind to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment that you have to that person. There's multiple things that you can do, and I actually teach an entire class on this. But I'm going to teach you guys one thing today that you guys might decide to start using if you like. It's called contemplation of death or reflection of death. The Buddha teaches this. What you do is you sit quietly and you close your eyes and you envision that this person has actually died. This is like for you, Ted, you would envision that your wife has died. Maybe the police show up to your house. Maybe you get a call from the hospital. Maybe a family member calls you or something like this. You envision it in your mind. You're not aspiring for her to die. You don't want her to die. You're not planning for her to die. But you essentially convince the mind that she has died. And now you play this out in your mind. What are you going to do next? Again, you're not planning it, but you're just living through the motions as if this has occurred. So you're probably going to, talk to a funeral home. You're probably going to arrange a viewing. You're going to maybe do a burial or a cremation or something like this. There's probably going to be a memorial service. There's going to be family over at the house, so forth and so on. It's just like you're a fly on the wall living this out. And you continue to go through that all the way to the other side of it. Are you going to be selling your house in Connecticut or Florida? Are you going to be moving to a completely different place? Again, you're not planning it and you're not sticking to this, but you're just playing it out. What is life like after death? And you do this multiple times, because the first few times you do it, you're probably going to grieve. You're probably going to be sorrowful. Maybe even just talking about it right now, it can maybe trigger some cravings, and you might be noticing some sorrow and sadness coming up in your mind. And if that's the case, that's fine. That's helping the mind to be able to cut that off and let it go. Because one of the biggest things that you can experience is the death of someone who's close to you. And this death is going to come and visit you. Either you're going to die first or your life partner is going to die first. And this death can come and sneak up on you and catch you by surprise, or you can go visit death, because death is sitting over there in the corner and it's going to come visit you. And you can let it sneak up on you and cut you off at the knees or pull the carpet out from under your feet. Or you can say, I see you over there in the corner, death. You're going to come visit me, but you know what? I'm going to come visit you. And now you go visit death. And you do this about once a month, or maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks. And you're going to need to probably do it 3, 4, 5 times before eventually you do this a couple of times and you're not sorrowful, you're not sad, you're not grieving, you're not upset, and you've come to terms with the fact that your wife's going to die. And now you'll feel more and more of the attachment having let go. This by itself isn't going to fully eliminate your attachment to your wife, but this is going to knock it down significantly. And this is one of the teachings that the Buddha gives you in order to put the mind in the situation that it doesn't want to be in, which is your wife dying, because that's probably a situation that you're not interested in being in. But the thing is that you are going to be in that situation. Either you or your wife are going to die. It's only a matter of time. And you would like to confront that sooner rather than later so that you can come to terms with it. I did this with my grandmother and my mom within my own mind in my early 20s. And after I did this, I felt like all the extra time that I had with them was like bonus time. So about maybe 20 years, 22 years after I did this, my mom actually died. And when she died, I didn't grieve at all. And it's not because I didn't love her and I didn't care for her. It's because I'd already come to terms with her death. In my mind, I'd convinced my mind 22 years previously that she had actually died. So then all the other time that I spent with her throughout my life, it just felt like bonus time. So when she actually died, there was no grieving, there was no sorrow, but obviously there was love and care for her. But I just didn't need to grieve because I'd already done that 22 years before when I confronted this death. But then I got to spend all this extra time with her. So this is one of the ways to eliminate your craving and your attachment to an individual person. But if you'd like to confront this particular craving now and you think this is the right time, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can search. There's a class that I teach called How to Eliminate Attachment to Those Who Are Closest to Us. And you can see the times that I've taught this, and it's been recorded, and you can watch because there's more than just this. There's a lot of different things that you can do, but this is the real big one that really has the most impact.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so it looks like Leo has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you, David. In my case, there comes also a craving in my mind. It's that today, actually, my mother came into my room again, and she sometimes likes to give me unasked advices for, like maybe an internship I could do in a particular job, or maybe look in a job, or she has some contacts you can ask if I want to have a look there. So first, I think it's generosity, so it's a good thing. I also think that there's a craving for her to help me, maybe, or maybe to push me a little bit in something. But I think it's more a craving for helping. So it's a good things. But I still realize that I get somehow annoyed in the situations, because it seems a bit for me that she's somehow pushing me and maybe wants me to do something in this direction, or maybe she thinks that I'm not doing it by myself so much, and it sometimes gets me a bit out of what I was planning. Like I think, for example, I want to look for an internship in this field, but she comes up with another field. Hey, why are you not looking at this? And that's just that I see this annoyance. So I guess this could be something of the 20% where this happens again, and I just need to realize it, that wants to help me, generosity, and I just listen to her. But sometimes I'm not sure how I also should direct this. So I, for example, tell her that I will think about this, and I also told her that just because she's giving me these options, it doesn't mean that I will do it. These are good ways to do that. What do you think?
Yeah, so in terms of what I taught you today, this does fall into that 20% because you can't induce it, right? It's something that mom's doing. And this situation where she's giving you unsolicited guidance, she's putting the expectations on you and kind of trying to pressure you to do things a certain way, that's going to happen because she's not training her mind and she doesn't know anything different. She thinks she's practicing love. She thinks that's her love because she cares about you and she would like to see you do certain things, but she doesn't realize that this is her craving, desire, attachment, her wants and expectations. So there's nothing you can do to induce this, but it is going to happen. So when it is happening, you need to be very vigilant with the mind and cut off and let go of any discontentedness that's arising and train your mind to be calm and peaceful during that period of time. That's the best way to do it. It's just sit there and listen to your mom as calmly as possible. And this is what's going to help your mind to get comfortable with this. And then each time she does it, you should be able to see that your mind's getting more and more peaceful, more and more calm, and you're not affected by what she's sharing.
Okay. And explaining her things like, I might not do it, and things is also okay, I think.
Yeah, that kind of keeps it so that her craving doesn't stay intact. There's no harm with you saying that, but you might decide to just stay quiet and say nothing at all, because that's going to be more helpful for your mind, that you can get to the point where you can just listen to what she has to say without saying anything back. But there is no harm in saying what you said, as long as you're practicing right speech. The only challenge is if your mom has a craving for you to do things her way, when you say, Mom, I might not do it that way, it can trigger her craving. And now she's getting angry and she doesn't realize that her mind is causing her own anger. So oftentimes when someone's coming at you with their expectations like that, there's usually ego involved. And of course, there's sensual desire, their expectations. So if you go back at them with, well, I might not do it your way, it can trigger their ego and it can trigger their sensual desire. And oftentimes it's better to just say nothing at all when somebody's coming at you with ego and sensual desires. Just walk away. That's usually the best thing to do. But because you're trying to get rid of your craving here, I encourage you to stay in the situation and let your mom say whatever she's going to say. If your craving had already been eliminated and you're just trying to help mom to eliminate her cravings, I would suggest to you, as soon as she starts putting her expectations on you, to walk away. But in this situation, you need to let go of your cravings first, and you walking away isn't going to allow you to be able to do that.
Okay, I didn't have the feeling that she puts a lot of pressure and expectations on me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think in this case it wouldn't be wise to walk away, or doesn't make sense, I think, in this case.
So what you're doing by walking away is you're not allowing her craving to continue to persist. So when someone comes at you with a whole bunch of craving and expectations and their ego, if you just sit there and absorb it, they get to the point where they think that there's an open door for them to continue to put expectations on you. And now, next thing you know, people around you are just constantly putting their expectations on you. But every time somebody puts their expectations on you, if you choose to walk away right away when they first start talking, then they get used to realizing that every time they try to do that, you walk away from them. They'll eventually modify their behavior and they'll see that they're unwise to be doing that. And they might get angry when it occurs, but they're causing their own anger. But because you have a craving here that you're trying to extinguish, and your mom coming at you like this with her expectations is triggering that craving, it's better for you to keep your mind in that situation and train it to be comfortable in that situation. And that way, when these things are happening, whether it's your mom or anybody else in the world, like a boss or a coworker or something like this, you can be completely comfortable in these situations.
Okay. I think something I wanted to say also. I think, it's a good point to do this. I forgot it, but.
Yeah, no worries. You can always send me a message. You know how to message me.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so this is everything that I had to share with you guys today. It's just a really short class just to kind of help you understand this methodology and this best practice of how to induce the mind to be able to now get rid of these cravings, desires, attachments, almost surgically removing them. this process, while you might stumble over it the first few times that you implement it, as you get used to it and you start seeing how it works to actually improve the condition of your mind, you'll really appreciate this kind of thing. So when you're first learning something like this, it can feel very foreign to you and you might stumble over it as you're starting to use it the first time. But as you use it more and more, you're going to see how it clears up your mind, and you're going to really appreciate being able to surgically go in and remove these cravings, desires, attachments. I gave you 2 examples for myself today, but I've used this countless times and it's worked magically every single time. And if it wasn't for me using this, I wouldn't be able to experience what I'm experiencing now in terms of my mental state. So I know this is something that you're going to need to be able to use as a tool. I only teach you things that I know with 100% certainty they actually work, because they worked for me, they will work for you too. So when I'm teaching you these are things that you absolutely need to be able to learn in order to move the mind to enlightenment. But if you're still working to get your arms around a meditation practice and the Eightfold Path, then work with that first. That's why I prefaced the class with that. Once you get your Eightfold Path and the meditation and all that stuff underway, then you move into something like what I taught you today to be able to surgically go in and remove your cravings, desires, attachments. And this is what's going to help you to pluck away more and more of those cravings. Because the way that you can think about this is you're standing on a mountain of trash. You're standing on a mountain of trash. All your cravings, it's like a mountain. It's a whole massive amount of cravings, desires, attachments, and you're standing on top of this mountain, and you've got to clear away this trash. And as soon as you clear away the top portion of the trash, you're going to drop down and you're on more trash. And then you got to clear that off, and you drop down and you got to clear that off. And this is what's going to help you to do that. But if you don't have the Eightfold Path well understood and well underway and practiced, it doesn't make sense to do what I'm talking about today. So for some of you guys, you might just focus on the Eightfold Path and the things that I've taught you there. But when you're ready, you've got this to now be able to practice. And you can always come back and revisit this class through the recordings or through the book and the chapters and the things like that. So next week on Sunday, we're going to be in chapter 14. Chapter 14 is titled Cultivating Healthy Mental States, Loving Kindness, Compassion, Sympathetic Joy, and Equanimity. This is going to be another really short class where I'm going to introduce you to 4 healthy mental states, and I'm going to explain to you the situations where you would be able to use these. This is where the Buddha gets the reputation of being almost like a doctor, that there are certain symptoms that you experience in your mind, and there are certain remedies or certain prescription that you can apply to it. So I'm going to teach you what these 4 healthy mental states are, and I'm going to teach you the symptoms that they remedy, so that whenever you see these symptoms, you're going to be able to bring in these particular qualities. Some people refer to these as the Brahma Viharas. You might have heard that. That's a term that some people use. I call them the 4 healthy mental states, and you need to cultivate these. And this is going to fully help your tool belt that you're using to be able to get to enlightenment. It's going to help fulfill more and more of these tools that you have to bring in and actually transform the mind. So the Buddha is oftentimes described as a doctor, that he's seeing certain symptoms and he's prescribing certain prescriptions, but you are your own best doctor. And that's what I'm teaching you how to do, is to be able to look at your mind, analyze it, see certain symptoms that you're experiencing, and then know the certain tool to bring in at a certain time. So that's what we're going to be talking about next week, is these 4 healthy mental states. And you can read this chapter if you like. It'll probably take you all of 5 or 10 minutes. I think it's maybe like 2.5 pages or something like that. So we're going to be discussing chapter 14 next week on Sunday. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to be doing loving kindness meditation with students. And then I'm going to open up to any and all questions that you guys would like to ask about any aspect of the path to enlightenment. So enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you might choose to do. And perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well and have a lovely day. Take care. Sawadee krap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.